Hi there, Erica Bear.
Hello there, Tiffany Burns.
Oh, this is a school leader's playbook by connecting through conversation.
And we're super excited to welcome you to our inaugural episode. And so we thought we'd take just a few minutes to talk about how we got here.
Aw, yeah, that sounds great. So it's been a little bit of a journey, Erica.
That is the truth.
So we have been working together for about 15 years now, I think.
That's right. Yeah, it started way back when we were in our administrative preparation program. We met in, principal school and ended up getting jobs in the same district as first year administrators the next year. And so we really connected through that whole process. And here we are, two books and 15 years later.
And our most recent book, A School Leader's Playbook for Tough Conversations, just released this past week, which is so exciting.
Super excited. Number one new release on Amazon. Super, super fun.
Absolutely.
And
So,
really, we wrote this book because we were able to, through all of these years, really be able to problem solve through, think through, talk through, actually practice those things that are honestly the hardest in school administration. And so we really wanted we want everyone to have their own connection like we have. And minus that, we want to make sure that you can use us in that way as a toolkit and a way to practice and think about getting better at some of the tough stuff.
absolutely. Well, and I just remember when we very first started to get, I'm so glad you decided to be my friend. I was like, you are going to be my friend. You have no choice. And so I'm just glad that that worked out. And then when we
Me
got
too. Super glad. Yeah.
And then when we got hired in the same district, just being able to, I think, we had monthly dinners for years, right? That were
Yep.
scheduled. But then it was having that confidential person to be able to call and say, hey, I'm going to have this really hard conversation, or I think I have to talk to this person about this thing. Do you think I have to?
Yep. And the answer was almost always yes. Yes, you have to. And I think that's so common for school leaders, right? And for everyone in education. There are these really tough conversations that cause us so much angst that we worry about, that keep us up at night because they're really, really hard. And so it's really, really easy to avoid them. And we want to think about why we should have the conversation anyway, and um, what are some tools that we can use to make that conversation go a little easier. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
All right, I love it. Well, let's dive in. Let's I think before we start talking about why it's so important, can we surface why we don't have these kind of conversations or why we might try to not have them?
Yes, I think the for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's just the primary reason is it's hard. No one wakes up and is like, I know, I want to engage in a really challenging conversation today. I want to point out why someone's behavior isn't working in school, or call a caregiver and share with them something really hard about their kid, or provide feedback that is going to be really challenging to receive. It's really, really hard. And it's really, really normal to know that it's hard and that folks don't want to do it. I think the other thing that can hold us back is oftentimes we're really worried about damaging the relationship. We're worried about causing damage to that in our relationship with that individual. Maybe we're worried about cultural implications because, of course, they're going to talk about it with everyone.
And that is not an option that we have, right? Like
Right.
we can't say anything about it. We can't explain our side. And, for me, I was an elementary principal for I guess more than that, one school for 9 years, but I've been an elementary principal for longer. But as an elementary principal, I did not have an assistant principal or a vice principal. We didn't have a dean either. So I was the only one. It's a very lonely job to not be able to talk to somebody about the staff in a way that really, really understood, or not just the staff, but the whole school community that really understood the importance of, yes, I have to have this conversation. And yet, if it doesn't go well, or if they go out and say, Tiffany said this to me, I have no recourse. And that, for me personally, that made it harder for sure. That made it harder to even want to do it.
Yeah. And yet we have to. And there's a lot of reasons we do, right? Like it's hard and there's some cultural worries and maybe we're concerned about the relationship and all of the other things that can cause us to try and put it off or avoid it. The reason we dive in, the reason it's so critical that we have the conversation anyway is because we care. We care about the kids that we serve first and foremost, right? So these conversations are about supporting the students in our building. We also care about the folks that we support. So the caregivers that we support, the educators that we support, we care about them. We care about them personally, we care about them professionally, and we have to engage in these conversations because we care about them enough to have it, to go through that discomfort to get to the other side. Because when we don't, it can really damage trust and really cause issues across the board. So for me, it's about because we care, but also there's a challenge if you delay.
Right. Well, and I think sometimes we just, I've fallen into this and I've definitely talked to other leaders that have as well. Just, well, maybe it'll just go away. Maybe it'll just resolve itself, resolve on its own. And that, in my experience, that has not happened. Yet to happen. I haven't had that
You
experience.
you mean bad things don't get better with time?
They don't. Our buddy just was talking to us about that and reading our book. He literally wrote on the side in the margin, yes, bad news does not get better with time. So say the
Yeah,
thing.
right.
Well, and the
It's
other
important.
piece is if somebody knows that I have had this piece of information that I've been sitting on for a while and I haven't shared it, I'm actually I'm eroding trust. I'm really making them think about, gosh, what are the other things that she's not talking to me about? Or how long have you been sitting on this? That's a long time to wait to talk to me about something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also important to think about, a period of time, whether we don't have the conversation or we delay a conversation for too long. We know as leaders, we've heard that saying, right? What we permit, we promote. And so if there's been a behavior, if there's been poor performance in the classroom and it hasn't been addressed, that's sending a really loud message, not only to that person that it's acceptable, it's fine. I guess this is what we're looking for and how we are at work, but it also sends that same message to everyone else in our school or in our organization. And so if someone is looking at a situation going, wow, I guess this is the bar for performance, or it's okay to act this way, that's really disheartening for some of our really rock star teachers, for some of our really strong performers. That can be really demoralizing and really have a negative impact on our culture altogether. So, really encourage folks to step into it, and step into it with a lot of clarity, because with all of the angst that comes around these conversations, with all of the worry that comes around these conversations, we have to make sure the conversation's effective. Otherwise, we put ourselves through like this whole awful experience and didn't get any of the outcome that we were hoping for.
Absolutely. Well, and I think you're kind of alluding to that feedback sandwich that we've all likely heard about or maybe even used, where you have some really hard news to share, something difficult that you have to say to someone. And you really care about this person and you don't want to hurt their feelings and you want to make sure that, they know that you still care about them. So you start with saying something really kind and then you kind of sneak in the hard thing and then you finish by saying something really kind. And what we know is that people leave a conversation thinking about the first thing and the last thing that we've said. So they're leaving and they could be thinking everything's just great. And meanwhile, I've stayed up all night stressed out about having to have this conversation and the message didn't even land, which is really not ideal. It's not ideal.
Right. Not at all. And the other piece that I worry about with that, because sometimes, with the negativity bias, they are just hanging on to that one negative thing. So the pieces you put on either end feel really disingenuous if it's kind of laid out that way. If you're like, oh, I'm going to start nice and then hard and then nice. And when we do that, we also tend to soften the piece that is more negative. So it can come across as really disingenuous. Educators can see right through that, parents can see right through that. So and this isn't to say that we aren't going to point out strengths or point out positive performance. Absolutely, we're going to do that. But if we're sitting down to have a conversation about a specific area that's a concern, we're going to dive into the concern. We're not going to spend a lot of time, going through all of the reasons that they're so fabulous. So it's a little bit different. If we're sitting down to talk about an observation or we're sitting down to go through an evaluation, of course, in those instances, we're talking about both strengths and areas that we need to work on. Um, we just want to make sure that we're not setting it up in a way that they're kind of looking at us like, I know what you're doing here. So so we're not going to ignore either part. And just to talk about a concern, we're just going to talk about the concern. We're not going to let ourselves get sidetracked with trying to make it feel better for the other person because that's not going to work.
So I was talking to a teacher the other day, and they were talking to me about their principal had to share some feedback with them. There's a caregiver that was upset about something that happened in the class. And so the principal asked to talk to the teacher. The teacher goes in and is like, "What's up?" And the principal took like 15 minutes, is how it was relayed to me. The principal took about 15 minutes to get into the conversation. And by the time they shared, or, like having the conversation, but to get to what the real point of the conversation was, and by the time they got there, the teacher was like, "Oh, this is what this was about." Like, this could have gone a little faster for me.
Yeah.
Like, my feelings aren't hurt. I get it. I have to go fix this, with this caregiver and help clarify some misconceptions. But the teacher was like, "What is the point of this
Like,
conversation?"
super confusing. And also, Um, if the meeting was set up with an expectation that like we're going to talk about something maybe that's hard, that's 15 minutes of like that's a lot of anxiety, a lot of like what's happening and getting ready for the other shoe to drop. So that's not
Yeah.
super helpful.
Well, and also, I mean, we talk in our other book about the importance of small talk, but 15 minutes is a lot of small talk.
That really is. Yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, small talk is important in a lot of settings, but when we're sitting down to talk about something hard, it's probably not the best time. Yeah, not the best time for that.
Oh, that was the point of this. Okay,
Right.
great. Thanks.
Yeah, now we can address it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, it's really important when we're thinking about caregivers, when we're having to give hard information to a caregiver. And it could be about a behavior that happened at school, but I'm thinking more about, when we start noticing a pattern of behavior for a student, or we start to get questions about, they are not responding to this intervention, or this is something going on that feels like it's an ongoing concern or an ongoing pattern that we're noticing that maybe we wouldn't call or let the parent or caregiver know every day, "Hey, here's something going on." But over time, we start to notice. And I think for educators, for teachers, that can be really hard to want to do, to have that conversation and say, "Hey, here's what I'm noticing about your child." Um, for all of the same reasons, right?
Right. All of the same reasons. And it's a little bit more layered with a caregiver too, depending on how much opportunity you've had to lay a foundation and lay, be able to build relationships and know that they're going to trust what you have to say and the intention of what you have to say is really challenging. It can be especially challenging if we have a history of communication with a caregiver that's they don't always respond in the way that we're hoping. That might even make us pause a little bit longer. And this is where I think the idea of not waiting is so important. I think when we notice a concern, when there's something that's coming up, the sooner we address it, with the caregiver or with someone else in our community when there's a concern, the sooner we do it, the more likely that is to build trust as opposed to how long have you been sitting on this? What else is going on? You're making this up, all of those kind of spirally things that can happen with caregivers. And the only way for that to really happen effectively is if we're supporting our whole staff on having those conversations. And there's so many reasons why teachers hesitate. Maybe they had a bad experience. They're busy, of course, we all are. Maybe they're just really nervous about it, and so they don't want to engage in it. And so one of the tools we have, and we'll put this in the show notes, is a communication guide for when we're talking with caregivers. And it just lays out the steps really clearly. And so we encourage you, anyone who has conversations with parents, to print that off and take a look, because it it's important that we dive in and have it because we care about the kid. We know we're going to be able to support them better if we're working alongside the caregiver, if we're working in partnership, treating them as an actual partner, which means they have to know what's going on in order to help, um, then we're going to see way better outcomes for that kiddo.
When we don't have that conversation, I just think about, let's say that we've got a, fourth grade teacher and they're not having the conversation with the family. Like the student is new to us, fourth grade, we have to go through the whole year, right? And nobody's talked to the caregiver about this concern. And that's the principal either. Like nobody's done it, right? And then next year's teacher is going, you're in fifth grade and I need some of these things to change. I can't send you to middle school with this kind of ongoing behavior. And so the caregiver decides I'm going to reach, or this teacher decides I'm going to reach out to this caregiver. I'm going to share with them some things I'm noticing. If this is the first time they're hearing that, a lot of times that caregiver is going to think, well, what's wrong with this teacher? They did not have these issues at all before. This is a brand new concern. It must be this teacher. So if we're not having it when we notice it, we're setting up everybody else that's coming after. Not only are we not helping out the child, but we're setting up our colleagues, which is not also not ideal, not helpful.
Not kind. No, not kind at all. Yeah, and we go into pretty good depth on how to do this in our first book. I don't know if we said the titles of either of our books, but in our first book, Connecting Through Conversation, a playbook for talking with students, we have quite a bit that supports both administrators and caregiver communication, and then also teachers and caregiver communication. So really, it's worth spending the time. It's worth figuring out how we can make sure that everyone feels comfortable doing that so that the school leader isn't spending their whole day on the phone talking to caregivers, because there's a few other things that we have going on. um, and in those conversations and in all conversations, I want to circle back just a minute towards this idea of clarity.
Mhm.
I think when we know we have to have a conversation, when we're clear, a conversation must take place. And to be clear, if we're thinking anything close to that, there is a conversation that needs to take place, right?
So
We have to have it.
if you're
Yeah.
considering it, the answer is very likely yes, you have to have
Yes.
it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. If it is bubbled up in your mind, the answer is probably yes. So, when we're doing that, I think it is so important to think about the clarity of our message.
Mhm.
Think about what exactly needs to be communicated. Like, what is the message I want them to walk away with, so that we can make sure that is said. It is so easy to step into these conversations, and we have relationships with these folks. We're connected to them. We've done all of this work to lay that groundwork. And we get in there and we start kind of hemming and hawing, and we say part of it, or we've softened it, or we're just not clear. And these are the moments that I really want to channel our someone we admire very much, Brene Brown, when she says clear is kind, right? It is unkind to have feedback for someone or have an issue that needs to be discussed and we hold that back. It doesn't give the person an opportunity to improve. It doesn't give the situation an opportunity to improve. And so we have to be clear. For me, I have to actually write those things down. I have to actually write down these things have to be communicated. And it might just be two or three bullet points, but that is so important to hold myself accountable. I'll bring those into with me to the meeting, and as I'm going through, as I start myself starting to falter, starting to maybe back down, I remind myself, I look at it, and I'm like, nope, this was the whole purpose. This is why I was thinking about this at 5 a.m. I need to make sure that I get this thing done, and then just say it.
Absolutely. Well, and I remember calling you at times and saying, "Okay, I have to say this thing. Let's practice this for a minute. I think I'm going to try to say it like this." And then, oh, no, maybe try like that. And it really is the nuance of it. What exactly am I going to say? And how does that land? Is there a word choice I could use different? And then when I've got it dialed, not for everything, right? But just that I want to say this thing and I want to make sure that I say exactly that. And so for those just listening, they can't see, but I do not leave, or I don't go anywhere without my yellow pad. My yellow pad and we're besties. And so when I have those where this is the thing I have to say, I write it on my yellow pad, but I don't want somebody to be able to read it as they're sitting next to me. So I write in a very light pencil so I can see it and they can't. But then I have my notes right there. So they're just really accessible and I know I can't wiggle out of the thing that I have to say.
Right. Well, and I'm fortunate in that my handwriting is so poor that no one would be able to read it anyway. I have this really unique handwriting. And so when I'm writing notes to myself, it's really only intelligible by me.
I
So
just
that helps.
I love was it we were in a professional development recently. We were doing this big session in front of a whole district, and I learned that when you were doing student teaching, they made you practice handwriting. She's your
That
cooperating.
is true. That is true. Yeah. I was doing a practicum in a first grade classroom. And if you're going to teach first grade, it's really important that you are properly forming your letters. So I did practice. I can do it in a pinch. I can absolutely pull out that skill from when I was learning how to teach young guys. And it's not something I use when I'm taking notes or writing fast or really in my day to day anymore. I type or I'm writing just for me. But yeah, it is
I thought that's what made you decide you were going to do middle school and not
yeah.
elementary. You were like,
It
my printing isn't there.
it helped. It
Yeah,
helped. Yeah, middle school was definitely a better fit for me when I was in the classroom.
I love
Yeah.
that. That's
That
well, that's why I can't teach kindergarten. I'm not a good enough singer. I just
yeah.
feel like there's so much singing, which I love,
Yep.
but that's me in the car with no one else in it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's yeah. I've had the opportunity to work at every single grade level, and kids of all ages, and I've loved every single one of them. But if I were in the classroom again, middle school for me is where it's at.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I've taught every grade level, well, every level, and whatever level I'm in, I say to my husband, "This one is my favorite." He's like, "Yeah, I thought you said last one was your favorite." Nope, this one. This one is for sure my favorite. And right now, I'm teaching university pre-service
Yeah.
teachers right now, and next year it'll be administrators, people in their admin program, and my favorite level. My favorite thing to teach right now is university.
I love that. Yeah. I was thinking because I started as a special education teacher, which is how I got to work with every single grade level because I worked at every level. And when you're a special ed teacher, you're often, kindergarten through sixth grade or early intervention all the way through 21. So had a really varied experience. And I'm a superintendent now in a really fabulous district in Oregon. And it's my favorite job. And I think in the same way, I probably would have said that about every single job I've had. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. So I'm really, really glad that every single place in education we've found has been a joyous one.
Pretty great. Pretty great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. All
Yeah.
right. So should we connect it? Should we wrap up and start
Yeah. Let's wrap it up.
connecting it? Okay. So
Yeah.
I think the big idea I'm going to say for mine, bad news does not get better with time.
Yep. Yep. You've got to do it. I think for me, it is. You have to have the conversation. If you're thinking about it, do it. Don't wait. And then also, when you're in there, be clear. Don't waste all of the angst on a conversation that isn't effective. Make sure you are clear about what needs to happen. All
Well, and I
right.
too just thinking about an imperfect conversation is so much better than no conversation. So have it. If it's imperfect, that is okay. That is better than not having it.
Absolutely. And I think next time we're going to talk about some more strategies for getting ready for those conversations. So looking forward to that.
Yep. Help you have those conversations and sleep better at night. That's the goal.
That's the plan.
All right. Good talk, Erica Bear.
Good talk, Tiffany Burns.